Hello everyone, my name is Adrienne Wallace, and today I will be discussing two important frameworks in distance and online education. First is Moore's transactional distance theory, founded in 1997, and the community of inquiry model developed by Garrison, Anderson, and Archer. Now, even though these theories were developed years ago, they are actually more relevant today than ever, especially with online learning, blended classrooms, AI tools, and digital learning environments becoming the norm. Today, I will break down each model and its key components. Second, I will show how these components work together. 3, I'll give real classroom examples. 4, and then connect everything to what this means for us as educators. And finally, I'll talk about how we can update or enhance these models for today's learners. Let's begin with Moore's transactional distance theory. One of the biggest misconceptions about distance learning is that distance just means physical separation. But Moore tells us that's not really the issue. The real issue is what he calls transactional distance, which is the psychological and communication gap between the teacher and the learner. So even in a face-to-face classroom, there can still be distance if communication is weak. Moore's transactional distance theory explains that distance in education is not just physical separation, but a psychological and a communication gap between learners and instructors. This gap, called transactional distance, is shaped by 3 key components. The first is dialogue. This is the interaction between the teacher and the student. It refers to meaningful, two-way communication between the teacher and the learner. Second, high-quality dialogue is purposeful, interactive, and supports understanding. Third, are the students asking questions? Are you giving feedback? Are there discussions happening? The more dialogue you have, the less distance exists. Second is structure. This is how rigid or flexible your course is. Are there objectives, content, assessments? Highly structured courses equals less flexibility for individual needs. Less structured courses equal more adaptability. Is everything fixed, or can students explore, adapt, and make choices? More structure equals less flexibility. Less structure equals more personalization. 3, learner autonomy. This is how independent the student has to be. It refers to the degree of independence learners must exercise. It also increases when dialogue is low and structure is high. Are they self-directed? Can they manage their learning on their own? The higher the distance, the more autonomy students need. How do they all work together? Here's the key relationship. High dialogue plus flexible structure equal low transactional distance. Low dialogue plus rigid structure equals high transactional distance. Higher transactional distance equals greater need for learner autonomy. In other words, when students can interact and receive feedback, learning feels closer and more supported. When courses are rigid and interaction is limited, students must rely more on self-direction. And when distance is high, students are basically on their own. One example is old correspondence courses. Think about learning through the mail. You get a packet, you complete it, you send it back. There's very little dialogue, very high structure, and high independence. That's high transactional distance. The next example is a classroom with Google Classroom and/or Nearpod. Now let's think about our own classroom. You're giving feedback, students are collaborating, you're using interactive tools. That increases dialogue, and that makes structure more flexible. So now you have lower transactional distance. The key takeaway here is Moore's theory basically tells us if students feel disconnected, confused, or unsupported, it's not just distance, it's poorly designed interaction. Now let's move into the community of inquiry model, which builds on this idea but takes it even further. This model focuses on one big idea. Learning happens best when students are part of a community. In the community of inquiry model, it explains how meaningful learning occurs in online environments through the interaction of 3 core presences. First, cognitive presence. This is about thinking and learning, the ability of learners to construct and confirm meaning through reflection and discourse. It follows the practical inquiry model, triggering event, which is problem identified, exploration, discussing and brainstorming, integration, connecting ideas, and resolution, applying knowledge. Students go through a process. A problem is introduced, they explore it, they connect ideas, then they apply what they have learned. This is where real learning happens. Next is the social presence. This is about connection, the ability of learners to present themselves as real people in an online environment. It includes emotional expression, open communication, and group cohesion. Do students feel comfortable? Do they feel seen? Are they interacting with others? If students don't feel connected, they won't engage. And last is your teaching presence. This is us, the teacher, the design, the facilitation and direction of learning. It includes instructional design and organization, facilitating discourse, direct instruction. How do you design the course? How you guide learning? How you facilitate discussions? Basically, the teacher is the one creating the environment. How they work together. Here's the powerful part. Teaching presence builds the structure. Social presence builds the relationship. Cognitive presence builds the learning. And when all three come together and overlap, that's where meaningful learning happens. For example, a group coding project. Let's say your students are building a website. There's teacher presence, you provide instruction, rubric, and tools. Social presence, students collaborate and communicate. Cognitive presence, students solve problems and apply coding skills. That's the code model in action. Social plus cognitive plus teaching presence working together. Key takeaway, code tells us learning is not just content delivery, it's interaction plus community plus thinking. Implications for teaching, what does all of this mean for us? Interaction is everything. If students are just watching videos, that's not enough. We need discussions, collaboration, and feedback. 2, teacher presence matters. Students need to feel like my teacher is here with me, not I'm just clicking through assignments. Next, build community, especially in online learning. Have icebreakers, group work, peer feedback. These are not extra, they are essential. 4, design for thinking, not just completion. We want students to analyze, apply, create, not just memorize, click, and submit. Now let's look at how we can enhance these models for today. While code model is powerful, modern learning environments suggest enhancements. 1, add learner presence. Students today need self-regulation, motivation, digital behavior. This is important for online learners managing independence. Next, integrate technology presence. Include technology as a factor. Technology is no longer just a tool. It shapes learning. AI tutors, Nearpod, XR, VR. These tools increase interaction and engagement. We must recognize the role of AI tools, LMS platforms, XR and VR environments. Technology now actively shapes interaction, not just delivery. Emphasize equity and access. Consider digital divide, accessibility, inclusive design. Next, expand to hybrid blended models. We now teach face-to-face, online, and blended. These models need to reflect that flexibility. Code should explicitly address in-person plus online integration. Flexible learning environments. Lastly, incorporate data and analytics. Use learning analytics and engaging tracking tools to improve teaching presence and student outcomes. In conclusion, Moore's transactional distance theory teaches us that distance is about communication gap. The community of inquiry model teaches us how to close those gaps through community and interaction. Moore's transitional distance theory explains that effective online learning depends on balancing dialogue, structure, and learner autonomy. The goal of instructional design is to minimize transactional distance by increasing meaningful interaction and flexibility while supporting student independence. The community of inquiry model demonstrates that effective online learning occurs when teaching presence, social presence, and cognitive presence work together to create a meaningful educational experience. Modern framework takes the community of inquiry and emerging technologies like AI and XR and extend Moore's theory by emphasizing community, engagement, and adaptive learning, making it even more relevant in today's digital learning environments. For educators, the key takeaway is that technology alone does not create learning. Intentional design, interaction, and community do. By integrating modern tools and expanding the model to include learner and technology technology factors, the COLD framework remains highly relevant in today's evolving digital learning landscape. The biggest takeaway is that technology does not create learning, design, interaction, and connection do. As educators, our role is to reduce distance, build community, and create meaningful learning experiences. If we want students to truly learn in online environments, we have to move beyond just delivering content and start designing experiences that connect, engage, and empower them. Thank you.